The White House is still very much locked down. The fences that were briefly removed have gone up again. The rest of the country is opening up, but the number of cases of the novel coronavirus is now rapidly rising. If we look at the figures from Johns Hopkins University, we can see that the early cases came from New York and neighbouring New Jersey. But as that hotspot cooled, we're now seeing a flare-up in Florida, Texas, California and Arizona. So what's behind this extraordinary rise in cases in the United States? This, of course, being an election year, everyone has a narrative, including the man who lives in the house behind me. The president maintains that the rise in cases is simply a reflection of the success of the testing regime he's put in place. More tests find more cases.
So we do all these tests, and we find pockets, and we find people, and we find cases, and they say the cases have jumped, instead of saying what a job we're doing with testing.
The data suggests some support for the president's view. If we take the states driving the increase in cases, Florida, Texas, California and Arizona, we can indeed see that the number of cases is surging. However, when we switch to looking at the number of deaths, there's been no spike, at least not yet. In Florida, for example, the number of daily deaths is in the mid-30s. That's below the 50 or so deaths a day in early May, and well below the nearly 1,000 daily deaths that we saw in New York. But according to some epidemiologists, deaths might soon rise.
The first thing that you begin to see is a higher rate of positives among people who are being tested for the virus. And then you see higher rate of people who have clinical illness. Then you see more hospitalizations, and then unfortunately you see deaths.
You expect to see a surge in deaths in a week or so, 10 days' time?
I do. I do expect to see a surge of deaths. Hopefully, not as huge of a surge as we would have if healthcare is overwhelmed.
So all eyes are on hospitals like Houston Methodist, at the epicenter of the new Texas outbreak. They are nearing capacity with their ICU beds.
If it stayed at this rate, I feel pretty good for, a good couple of weeks before we start to really stress ourselves a lot. If it starts accelerating more, of course, that becomes more of a challenge. And so what we're seeing that concerns us even more, honestly, is that the virus seems to be spreading rapidly through the community. When we test patients, we're seeing far more people testing positive, far more people requiring testing. And when they do get a test, the positivity rates have gone up from a low of 3 or 4% back in the middle of May to now 24, 25+% each day. And so that obviously causes a lot of concern for where things are going in the future.
Houston was, of course, George Floyd's hometown and saw a huge surge in protests following his death a month ago. How much are these protests responsible for the rise in cases right across America? One clue might be the fact that the median age of cases has dropped from mid-60s to mid-30s.
I can't help but think that the protests could provide an opportunity for spreading the virus. You're out there with others, and people are yelling, and they seem to be sometimes close to each other. However, the strongest evidence for transmission right now has to do with bars and restaurants and other indoor locations.
In a few days, America goes into its national birthday celebrations. Here in Washington, the mayor has cancelled the usual July the 4th festivities, but across the United States, in parks, on beaches and in backyards, it may be a very different story.
Well, indeed, that was David Grossman. We're heading to Texas now. Joining us now, the Mayor of Wichita Falls in Texas, Stephen Santellana. What are we seeing, Mayor Santellana, in Wichita Falls itself?
You're seeing an increased number of cases, and that's due to the opening up for the economy. The governor opened up bars and restaurants again, and we knew there was going to be a spike. We fared a little different than most of our cities our size, but right now we're starting to see those numbers come up.
Why did the governor open up for business if you weren't seeing COVID fall in the first place?
I think there was a lot of pressure to get the economy back open. There is a cost to the economy, a death cost to the economy going down, where poverty levels go up and you start seeing an increase in deaths for different reasons. And I think maybe a little political pressure led to us opening the economy a little sooner than we wanted. But also when you're doing well, you think you can continue to do well. And right now it's not showing to be that way.
So if it carries on like this, and Wichita Falls is a small place, from what I hear, under quite a lot of pressure, what choices do you actually have as mayor there?
We don't have a lot. We've had a lot of the power that we have during emergency times stripped from us and given back to the state. So now we have what we call these blanket orders for the whole state of Texas. Texas is a big state, so it doesn't fare well for my community if I'm not able to take care of my community the way I think I would see fit. So right now we're working on the governor's orders, and he has given us some power back on restrictions of having events over 100, where we have to approve those events. But other than that, we're really running on the governor's orders.
There seems to be a divide in terms of how people are responding. For example, even something as sort of apolitical as mask wearing has somehow got a kind of machismo to it now. What are you finding on the ground there?
Well, it seems apolitical maybe to a lot of people, but here we're in a very conservative part of Texas, a very conservative part of the nation, where you're almost split. It's people thinking that you're taking away civil rights, their constitutional right to wear what they want. So a lot of politicians have found themselves making this a political issue. Something as simple as wearing a mask, or something as simple as requiring anybody to wash their hands or to close their businesses. Something that you would think would not be political is very political in this part of our country.
So what do you say as mayor then? If you want people to wear masks or wash their hands or socially distance, what power do you have?
You know, it's one of those things where I'm going to follow my governor. We're going to respect that office, but in the sense that if my community, I have a responsibility as an elected official to take care of my community. So if my community is not faring well, and we start seeing an uptick in these COVID cases, and the coronavirus spreads throughout my community faster than we can handle it. You know, we don't want to inundate the hospitals, but we know there's going to be a spread. It's going to be something that I'm going to have to really take a hard look at, and where I need to take care of my community. I was elected to take care of the 100,000 people here. So I might have to go against those governor's orders or do something a little different that will be beyond what he is allowing us to do.
And you said the governor himself might have been under pressure politically. Have you had clear messaging from the top on this, or do you believe that the president is instructing governors what to do? How would you like to see it working?
You know, that's a hard one. You would think the president is getting involved, and he does. He makes those calls to the states. And I think the governor, just like any elected official, feels political pressure from both sides, basically. You know, they have a lot of officials, state representatives, state senators that voice their opinion to the governor. I think he feels a lot of pressure, and a lot of the decisions he's making, he's now having to backtrack on because he made these decisions, and now he's knowing that the state is not doing well, much like in your broadcast earlier, talking about Texas, Florida, California. There's a lot of states that aren't doing well, so you have to do well for your community. So I think that the governor, of course, feels that pressure, and of course, it's political. It's always going to be political. But I think we use a lot of common sense, and we use a lot of good information from a lot of people around us. I know the governor does the same thing.
Mayor Santellana, we wish you well, and thanks very much for joining us here on Newsnight.
Thank you so much for having me.